So it's Tom Brace, magician, on our podcast for today. Hello, Tom.
Hi. Hello, Roger. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Beverly is with us today as well to join us. So we've got to ask you, the love of magic, when did it start for you?
Well, I was actually quite a late bloomer in the magic world, so to speak. Lots of magicians always talk about, getting their first magic set at 8, and becoming like obsessed with it when they were young. I was, and I need to get this right, I think 25. So this was about 3 or 4 years ago now. Always had wanted to be an actor, trained in performance in terms of, I got a theatre degree from the University of Kent, and then went off to try and do the acting thing, realised that there wasn't enough work / I wasn't good enough. And so I then very quickly did what most performers or wannabe performers do, and then I went into sort of theatre administration. So I started working theatre marketing, started working behind the scenes, and I got a job at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival with the Pleasance Theatre, who are quite a big venue up there. Spent 3 years with them, each year going up to the festival. And then one year I saw a magician just walking around doing close-up magic table to table, and it blew my mind. And he did this trick, and I just became slightly obsessed with it. And I think mixture of sort of seeing that and being slightly frustrated that I wasn't performing, I thought, well, maybe I could give magic a go. And then basically I got off the train from Edinburgh, been up there for 6 weeks, got off the train from Edinburgh, and went to a magic shop in King's Cross. It was like a proper Harry Potter story. And then sort of started buying books and DVDs and things, and very quickly became quite obsessed with it. And then sort of subsequently left my desk job, threw it all in and gave the magic a go. And then I've been doing it since. So there we go, a bit of word vomit for you right at the start. But that's kind of where my love came from.
So what were you doing before magic then?
So yeah, I was working for the Pleasance marketing team. So I'd go up to Edinburgh and I'd help them promote their fringe shows, essentially sort of giving out flyers and putting together brochures and things like that. And I absolutely loved it. I met some amazing people, had some of the best summers of my life, because you go up there for the entirety of August, and it's such a thrill. And if anyone hasn't been before, I really, really recommend it. And I loved it, but I was jealous of people that I was promoting shows for, and I wanted to do that myself. And I thought, well, how can I do that? And then it was just by chance that I sort of stumbled across magic, and then it's addictive. Once you start learning it, it becomes very, very easy to fall down a rabbit hole and spend lots of your money on books and cards and things like that. So yeah, that was kind of basically the sort of the story into it.
So you were learning all about it just through books and through YouTube. Did you go to magic school or something?
Do you know what? This is what people ask. Yeah, I often get asked, "Did you go to magic school?" No, it was purely through sort of buying books from a magic shop, buying sort of DVDs, like tutorial DVDs. There's an interesting sort of concept in magic where you don't necessarily buy tricks, you sort of buy secrets. Someone will think of a way of doing the impossible, and then you say, well, I want a bit of that, I want to know how to do that. So you sort of buy the secret from them. So yeah, there are magic schools and magic classes and whatnot and all that kind of thing. But yeah, fundamentally I learned from just sort of reading and watching DVDs and things like that. And there are lectures and there's conventions and it's a really, really really, really popular hobby for some people and profession for lots. But yeah, there's no sort of official training, so to speak. I've got a degree in theatre performance, and I do think that is a huge part of what of how I learned to do what I do, because I was confident speaking on stage, I was confident performing, I had also done a bit of stand-up whilst I was at university, so that transition was sort of fine. It was just the learning the sleight of hand and the secrets, so to speak, that was the challenge.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very apparent that part of magic is the performance element of it. So your degree helped you immeasurably, I imagine. While you were learning then, did you practice on family?
Yes, yeah, I sort of drove family and friends, insane
Mad.
with. Yes, yeah, and I think that is sort of why I was so keen to transition into doing this for people other than family or friends, because there's only so many times you can say to your housemate, "Go on, just watch this, see if you can work it out," and they're very supportive and they're very kind, but they, I think to a degree everyone sort of. There's only so many card tricks they can see before they go a bit mad.
So what magicians do you hold in high regard? You know, who influences you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, because again, I didn't have that sort of love of magic growing up. So I do feel like a lot of my inspirations are fairly modern in terms of magicians. There's a couple of artists up at the Fringe. Nick Mohammed, who plays a character called Mr. Swallow. He's like he's one of those faces where you see him on everything, and you sometimes don't realize that he is also a magic act. Very silly, very sort of slapsticky, humorous, sort of surreal magic. I would actually say a lot of my influences for what I do probably don't come from the magic world, but my sort of love of sort of like physical comedy growing up, where I used to absolutely love Fawlty Towers, and those kind of Monty Python-esque shows that had that sort of visual humor mixed with that clever wordplay. So a lot of my inspiration for my performance style actually doesn't come from magic. It comes from this sort of old school sort of variety comedy sort of background, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? So you're not the traditional stand in a penguin suit to produce a bit of magic. How would you describe your style then? You get on the stage and...
Yes, I mean, so basically my show is all about, my style and my character is, I'm a magician. I can do incredible things that are impossible, but are totally pointless. So for example, people always say to me, can you predict the lottery numbers? But I can only see 42 minutes into the future. So it's a very specific skill that I have. And so the way I present my show is that I can do these amazing things that, normal humans can't do, but they have no point, or they're very restricted. They've got some odd conditions on them. For example, I do a bit in my new show where I can make something teleport from one side of the stage to the other, but it can only be 1.4 meters. So it's oddly specific, and that's kind of the character. And then the humor of this sort of man who can do the impossible, but without much sort of use in the real, or no real world application, is kind of where the humor comes from. And then basically, I mean, that sort of then has transitioned into what I'm doing for this year. So I'm bringing my show to the Camberley Theatre on the 3rd of June. And this show is all about what a magician does when he can't perform on stage, or you've been locked up, you're in a pandemic, you're locked down, you can't do what you normally do. So it kind of explores all the things that I've done over the year from the comfort of my own home, if that makes sense.
I was going to say, where did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, there wasn't much choice really. It's been a very, very confusing and a difficult year for performers and not just magicians, but actors, musicians, everyone. We've in the last few days, obviously it's been a year since theatres closed, and there's that whole sense of we were the first ones shut and we'll be the last ones to reopen in society. I think it's been a challenge, and working out how you do socially distanced magic has been the sort of the focus for 11 months now, 12 months. But do you know what? It's actually been really enjoyable. The first few months were tricky, but then eventually the whole sort of magic community we sort of looked at it and went, we've got to work out something, otherwise we'll all disappear, if you'll pardon the pun. And a big part of this year has also been Zoom shows. So that's been how I've been making my money for the year, is actually performing magic over Zoom.
So obviously, you're on Zoom at the moment. So is there a trick that you could tell us right now in the middle of this interview?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I realized with magic, and certainly with sort of performing over Zoom, is it was much trickier for me to get people to interact with me. But the whole thing with magic is it has to be nice and interactive. So for example, the first thing that popped into my head when I realized that I wouldn't be able to do magic face to face is, how would I do a card trick? And this is how I do it. So Beverly, are you any good at shuffling cards?
I'm not bad at shuffling cards.
Fantastic. You're going to be perfect for this. I've got a pack of cards here. Now, these are slightly different. They're adapted for Zoom because these are invisible cards. They're much easier to use. In fact, I can pass them through the screen to you. So if you could just take those, there we go. And if you could just give them a little shuffle for me, Beverly, that would be amazing. Oh, so you are pretty good. That's fantastic. Now, what I want you to do is, with those cards, I want you just to spread through all of the cards, look at every single face, make sure they're well shuffled. Don't let me or Roger see. You're going to pick a card. It's a classic trick. You're going to pick a card, any card. Do me a favor, though. Make sure it's not the Queen of Hearts or the Ace of Spades, because everyone picks those. We don't want people to think that, it's an obvious choice. Do you have one?
Okay, so I take one, but I don't tell you.
Don't tell me what it is. No, you can just take it out of the pack, look at it, make sure Roger doesn't see, just in case he's feeding me any information. And I want you to take it, turn it upside down, and put it back in the pack. Now, obviously, this trick works as well over Zoom, but it also works. I imagine some of your listeners will be listening via the podcast. So at the moment, they haven't missed anything because these cards are invisible. What you're seeing is what they're seeing. Now, this is where it gets interesting. I want you to take those cards and put them back through the screen to me. I will give them a little shuffle. I'm going to put them in a box and close it up and then just put it on the table. Now, this is the bit that's mind-blowing. This is the bit that I've been working on for a while. And this is the bit, unfortunately, anyone who's sitting on the podcast, you won't see. But trust me, you'll hear Beverly and Roger's reactions and you'll feel like you're in the room with us. When I snap my fingers, you're not going to believe this, the cards that you shuffled that were invisible, Beverly, become completely visible.
A real pack of cards.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess there might be some people, some spectators listening on the podcast that might not believe that that's actually just happened. So what I like to do to prove that these cards were invisible is there should be in here one card turned upside down, because you turned a card upside down, right?
That's right, I did, exactly.
Fantastic. Yeah, exactly. So what card did you pick, Beverly?
I picked the 7 of clubs.
The 7 of clubs. So that means the 7 of clubs should be the only card in this pack upside down. You are the eyes and the ears of the audience and everyone at home. I'm going to just spread through the cards and you tell me when you see one that is upside down.
There. Yeah, that one.
I'll take it. I'll pop it in my mouth. Out of all the cards you could have turned over, it was.
That's crazily good. That is, I can vouch for the fact, people listening, it is the 7 of clubs.
7 of clubs, yeah, the only card upside down. So that is, that's sort of basically that opens my Zoom show at the moment.
But hold on, let me just stop you just there. That basically starts your show. There's nothing basic about that, because I could have picked anything. Were you subliminally messaging me or something? I had no idea.
The cards were just invisible. That's the thing. People always think that I perhaps am doing some sort of Derren Brown mind control and putting cards in their head. The cards were, look, because now I can make the cards invisible again. Look, I'll show you. Isn't that, mate? Look, it's amazing, isn't it?
It's crazy. Crazy. Magic card. Yeah. And
that's the start. So the show, it's an hour long. So typically, I hope gets better throughout the show. That is sort of what it's been like over the last year. And now this new show that we're bringing to Camberley it's sort of that kind of thing, but translated to real life. And and the hope is that we bring people up on stage in a socially distanced way. We ask if people are comfortable. There's hand sanitizer, there's masks involved, and we've really sort of thought about how we make this work, because obviously as much as the vaccine rollout and stuff is working, there's no denying that there's going to be some level of social distancing for a while. I mean, especially over the winter months, there's talk of these things coming and going. And as a magician, I still need to work throughout those times. So it's been a really important year to work out how you sort of do such an intimate close-up thing socially distanced, if that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, hopefully we did a version of the show back in the summer in August on Brighton Beach. We did it in an open air theatre on the beach, which was amazing, next to Brighton Pier. And so hopefully, we come to Camberley and we sort of we get people. I want people to feel confident to go back to the theatres, not just for my show, but for other shows as well. Because, like I said, we are the industry that's been the hardest hit, I would say. Especially if you're a self-employed performer, you've had you haven't had the furlough, you've had the grants, but you've definitely taken a knock this year. So I would encourage anyone listening, if you can, please come to my show in Camberley on the 3rd, but also go to any other shows. I know they've got a fantastic lineup of comedians and bands and tribute artists and things. So if you can, and I'm sure you're all dying to go out anyway, because we've all been locked up for a year.
I've got to ask you, Tom, as a group of magicians, do you all kind of share tricks and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so typically each year there is the Blackpool Magic Convention. So it is the biggest magic convention in the world, and it's in Blackpool, of all places. It's like 4,000 magicians. We all get together every year, and we basically celebrate all things magic. There's lectures, there's shows, there's a big hall of like sort of magic creators that are there sort of selling their secrets, selling their products. And it's a really lovely community. It's lovely. There's lots of people that are just so happy to share and work together. And over the last 12 months, because we've all taken our craft online, there's a Facebook group, and there's probably there's thousands of us in it. And it's sort of magicians sharing how they've adapted, So it's people like say, do you know what? I worked out how to do this card trick on Zoom. You guys should try it out. Here's how I do this, and it's lovely. I think there's a kind of, what's the word I'm trying to? There's a kind of thought process that perhaps magicians are very secretive, and there's like magic rivalries, and of course, like in any profession, there is, but fundamentally there's a lot of support. There's a lot of camaraderie, and it's a very lovely sort of welcoming environment, especially for someone who joined it so late in life. I kind of expected to turn up to Blackpool Magic Convention on my first year of doing magic and see all these people that have been doing it for 20, 30 years and feel a little bit shunned, but it was lovely.
I think magicians and magic has become more and more popular thanks to the variety of like programs like Britain's Got Talent, for instance, where they had one hell of a year one year where I think there was about 5 magicians all in the final.
Yes, I mean, last year as well was incredible in terms of magic. There were so many amazing artists. You obviously had Magical Bones, who is very popular. And Ben Hart over the years, and there has been a sort of a resurgence in magic, which is lovely, because I do remember a time where magic was sort of a bit laughed at and a bit sort of sneer. There was definitely a time where those variety shows got magicians on to make them look silly, and I don't think that's the case anymore. I think there's a real sort of comeback in magic. And because, and I remember, even though I wasn't that interested in it growing up, it was still a very popular art form. Yesterday was 5 years as well since Paul Daniels died. It was 5 years ago yesterday. So it's still out there. And I think, you're right. It's absolutely coming back in a big way. And hopefully, it's here to stay for a bit.
Yeah, I think after the, sadly, Paul passing away, for instance, it was a kind of, there was no magicians around, there was magicians around, but there was no one to kind of take his legacy on and take it further until the talent shows came along, and I think it's ever popular as it was then.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. You've got there are obviously a few magicians that are still about and are sort of carrying on that legacy. Obviously, Darren Brown is a huge sort of global phenomenon now, and sort of the likes of Dynamo and that sort of street magic kind of type thing. But what I really enjoy is sort of trying to bring that the old school variety performance back in a modern way. So I don't, like you said earlier, Beverly, I don't come out in a like penguin suit and it's not all doves and things. And my show is both sort of nostalgic and classic, but also modern and contemporary at the same time. And I kind of hate that I just said that because I think it makes me sound a bit pretentious. But it's about sort of making sure that your art form is still relatable, and making sure and a lot of my show uses popular culture references that people now understand. My show that I do at Camberley involves a section called based entirely around Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and we play out a game of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with a magic twist. So it's taking classic plots and tricks and sort of special powers and making them relevant to young audiences. And lots of the rest of the show as well is, because my show is branded as a show for all ages, and it very much does rely on that sort of Saturday night Britain's Got Talent audience, the mums, the dads, the nans, the children, all sitting down together and watching it at the same time. So that's the style of it.
Yeah, I think that's great to have something that's like family entertainment that you can all go wow, and you can look at it from different perspectives as well. I like the sound of your style of magic. And when you said, you thought it sounded a little bit pretentious how you explained your magic. Well, I think it's something like maybe like doing up an old house. You love a lot of things within that old house, but you've got to bring it into the modern world. And we're going to be living with COVID for years and years, aren't we? So if you've got a way of doing safely, socially distanced magic, if that is the way that we've got to do it longer term, so you're a little bit diverse, that's great, because we've all got to learn a new way of doing things, and that's in all sectors. That's the audience watching and the performers performing as well. So I think I might log off from this podcast and actually go and buy some tickets. That'd be great. How did you get to have the gig at Camberley?
So it's been a long time coming, Camberley. So I toured. I've got a show that basically was touring the UK. I take it up to Edinburgh for the Fringe each year because of my connections up there. And then it would have been 2019 actually. 2019, I went out on a UK tour. So I had 35 venues that I was touring to. I worked with a tour company, a promoter called Phoenix Theatre Arts, and Camberley was one of the gigs on that tour. And then we were sort of halfway through it in February last year, and then all of a sudden we started getting phone calls from the venues just saying, look, we're going to have to look at just postponing the show maybe till later in the year. And then Camberley was one of those shows that it was like, okay, it's going to be in a month, and then it was like, do you know what, actually it's going to be in the next 6 months. And then I think this is the 4th reschedule of it we've had. We were going to be in February just gone. The lockdown prevented it. Then it was going to be May. And then it's been pushed back ever so slightly because this sort of easing of the lockdown meant that we couldn't actually open. And now we're going to be one of the first shows back on the 3rd of June. So it's been a long time coming. I'm looking forward to it. And they've been lovely. The theatre's been so supportive in sort of rescheduling stuff, and that's sort of fundamentally why, obviously I want to sell tickets because I want to, also make some money. There's no hiding that, but I also really want people to feel confident to come back to the theatres, to come back, and I want the young people of the UK to be able to start experiencing art because that's why I love it. I watched theatres and theatre shows, and pantos and things like that from such a young age, and I think it had such a positive influence on me. And so I really hope that we can get back to that. We can get our young people to start enjoying live performance and get off those screens as much as we've relied on them over the last year. Get off of Netflix and Zoom, guys, and come to the theatre.
Get out there and just enjoy our lives again. On the 3rd of June, then, what's the audience situation? What are you allowed to have? How does it work?
So it is the Camberley is I think it's usually about 500 seats. It's now 125 per show, and they are all separated up into bubbles. So if you go onto the website, there are like sort of seats of 4 and 3 and 2. They're all socially distanced, and then we're doing 2 shows. Normally we would just do 1, but we're going to do 2 to try and match what we would have been, a similar capacity to what we would have had if we were there non-socially distanced. So yeah, people book in bubbles. They've worked so hard, like many theatres, to make everything COVID secure. They thought about everything, one-way systems, contactless payments, that kind of thing. So yeah, if you're sort of listening to this and going, oh, I'd like to come back to the theatre, but I'm not sure, if I feel confident. I know there's been a lot of work in these businesses, and they spent a lot of money making sure that people feel comfortable coming back, because that audience confidence needs to be there. Otherwise, the shows and the theatres won't survive.
It's been fantastic to speak to you today. Just give us a reminder of where people can see you and tickets and stuff.
Yes, yeah. So it's the 3rd of June. That's half term, I believe. So if you're looking for something to do with your family, it's 3rd of June at 2:30 and 7:30. The show is called Tom Brace Eat, Sleep, Amaze, Repeat, because that's all I've done for a year. And you can find those tickets on the Camberley Theatre website. And also, if you want to hear more about me and what I do, then you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter as Tom Brace Magic. And my website is tombracemagic.com. Goodness me, I've done that before. That was a real promo speech there, wasn't it? But yeah, thank you so much for having me, Roger and Beverly.